I, 28F, need to provide some background first. I met William, 30M, during our sophomore year in college. I was immediately drawn to him because of his ambitious nature and clear goals. We were both business majors. I was focusing on finance while he was doing general business administration. We started dating after being paired up for a group project, and everything just clicked. Despite being broke college students, our dates were always special because William would cook these amazing meals in his tiny apartment kitchen. He learned cooking from his grandmother, who raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 12. Cooking was his way of keeping her memory alive, and I always found that incredibly touching. After graduation, we both landed great jobs. I started at a mid-sized investment firm, while William secured a position at one of the top financial companies in our city. We moved in together, got married 4 years later, and everything seemed perfect. William was climbing the corporate ladder quickly. He had a natural talent for analysis and client relationships. Within 5 years, he was promoted to senior financial analyst with a salary of over $150K annually. I was doing well too, having switched to a better firm 2 years ago with William's encouragement. Throughout these years, cooking remained William's passion. He would spend entire weekends meal prepping and experimenting with new recipes. Our apartment became the unofficial gathering spot for our friend group because everyone loved his cooking. He would host these elaborate dinner parties where each course told a story. I remember one party where he created a 7-course meal based on our favorite travel memories together. It was his way of being creative while maintaining his corporate career. The change started about 4 months ago. William began talking more and more about feeling unfulfilled at work. He would come home exhausted and spend hours watching cooking shows and reading chef biographies. I noticed he was becoming less engaged in his job, but I assumed it was just a phase. Then, 3 months ago, he sat me down for what he called a life-changing conversation. He had been secretly researching culinary schools and found one that offered an intensive 18-month program. The school has a good reputation and has produced several successful chefs. He laid out his entire plan: quit his job, complete the program, work in various restaurants to gain experience, and eventually open his own place. He had spreadsheets, timelines, and even potential restaurant concepts mapped out. The catch? The program would cost us nearly all our savings, around $65K. This included tuition, materials, and basic living expenses during the program. We would have to live on my salary alone, which is decent but significantly less than our combined income. William had calculated that with some lifestyle adjustments, we could make it work. I was stunned but tried to be supportive. After all, he had always supported my career moves. When I wanted to switch firms 2 years ago, despite the initial pay cut, he encouraged me to think long-term. We spent weeks discussing the pros and cons. I asked about part-time programs, but he insisted that the intensive program would give him the best foundation. We went over our finances multiple times, created detailed budgets, and worked out a plan. Everything looked manageable on paper, so I agreed. The first month was actually exciting. William was like a kid in a candy store, coming home every day with stories about different cooking techniques and showing me his knife skills. He would practice his lessons at home, and while the results weren't always perfect, his enthusiasm was infectious. I thought maybe this was exactly what he needed. But things started changing during the second month. The program is brutally demanding. He leaves at 6 a.m. and often doesn't return until 8 p.m. or later. The physical demands of being on his feet all day, combined with the stress of learning everything from scratch, have taken a toll on him. He's constantly exhausted, irritable, and worst of all, he's lost interest in cooking at home. This last part really bothers me. Our weekends used to be filled with the smell of his cooking and the sound of friends laughing around our dinner table. Now, when I suggest having friends over, he says he's too tired. When I ask what he wants for dinner, he usually opts for takeout or something simple like pasta. The passionate cook who used to spend hours perfecting a sauce now barely has the energy to heat up leftovers. The financial strain is starting to show too. We had to cancel our planned trip to Europe, something we've been saving for over a year. We've cut back on all non-essential expenses. I've started taking extra projects at work to make up for the lost income. We're not in dire straits, but the comfort and security we worked so hard to build is slipping away. Last week, I discovered something that really shook my trust. While organizing our home office, I found papers for a personal loan of $20K that William had taken out without discussing it with me. When I confronted him, he said it was for essential equipment and additional workshops that weren't included in the original program cost. He argued that these extras would give him an edge in the industry. I was furious. We had always been transparent about our finances, and this felt like a huge betrayal of trust. Every time I try to discuss my concerns, William gets defensive. He reminds me that I agreed to this change and accuses me of not believing in him. He talks constantly about his future restaurant plans, but all I can think about is our dwindling savings and mounting stress. Yesterday, he mentioned wanting to extend his program by taking some advanced courses, which would mean even more time and money. I'm starting to realize that maybe I was naive in thinking this transition would be smooth. The William I knew was organized, responsible, and always considered our partnership in his decisions. This new William seems willing to sacrifice our financial security and relationship stability for his dream. While I admire his courage to pursue his passion, I'm terrified that he's being impulsive and unrealistic. I love him deeply, and I want him to be happy, but I'm really starting to regret supporting this decision. Our comfortable, stable life has been turned upside down, and I'm not sure if it's worth it. Sometimes I catch myself resenting him for choosing this path, and then I feel guilty for these thoughts. I don't know if I'm being selfish or practical. Should I continue supporting this dream, or is it time to have a serious conversation about going back to his corporate job? Edit to add, a lot of you have mentioned that I should give it more time since it's only been 3 months. You're probably right. I think the sudden lifestyle change and financial stress are making me panic. I'll try to be more patient and supportive while keeping an eye on our finances. Update 1: I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Many of you suggested I was being too hasty in my judgment and needed to give William more time to adjust to this massive life change. Your words made me reflect on my reaction, and I decided to try harder to understand his new world. Last week, I planned a surprise visit to his culinary school during their lunch break. I picked up food from his favorite deli, the one where we had our first date in college, thinking it would be a nice gesture to show my support. When I arrived at the school, the scene I walked into changed everything. I found the classroom area easily enough, but William wasn't there. A student directed me to one of the practice kitchens, saying he often spent extra time there. When I walked in, I saw William with a young woman who I would later learn was Sarah, 25F. They were standing very close together at a cooking station, and he was guiding her hands while teaching her some kind of cutting technique. What struck me was how relaxed and happy he looked, a complete contrast to the exhausted, irritable person I see at home. When they noticed me, William seemed startled, almost jumping away from Sarah. He quickly introduced us, and Sarah was overly friendly in a way that immediately set off alarm bells in my head. She kept touching William's arm while talking and referring to inside jokes I didn't understand. She mentioned how William had such a natural teaching ability and how lucky she was to have him as her practice partner. But what really caught me off guard was when she casually mentioned their weekend study sessions at her apartment. According to her, they've been meeting regularly to practice recipes and techniques. This was news to me. William had told me he was practicing at school during those weekends. When I glanced at him, he was staring at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. The ride home that evening was tense. When I finally brought up Sarah and the weekend study sessions, William became defensive in a way I've never seen before. He accused me of spying on him and said Sarah was just a dedicated student who needed extra help. When I pointed out that he had lied about where he was spending his weekends, he turned it around on me. He claimed my negativity about his career change was pushing him away, and he needed to spend time with people who actually supported his dreams. That argument led me to do something I should have done weeks ago. I went through our credit card statements in detail. What I found made my stomach turn. There were multiple charges from high-end restaurants and bars, all on weekends when he was supposedly studying at school. Some charges were from places across town, nowhere near either the school or Sarah's apartment. When I presented him with this evidence, his story changed. Suddenly, these outings were about networking and studying different restaurant atmospheres. He claimed it was essential for understanding the industry and building connections. When I reminded him about our tight budget and how we'd had to cancel our own dinner dates due to financial constraints, he exploded. "You just don't get it," he yelled. "This isn't about money, it's about learning and growing in my craft. You're trying to control every aspect of my new life because you're jealous I'm finally doing something I love." He stormed out and spent the next 2 days at his brother's place. During those 2 days, his brother Mark called me. Mark and I have always had a good relationship. He was even my confidant during the early days when William was planning to propose. But this conversation was different. Mark accused me of being controlling and said I was suffocating William's creativity. According to him, William had been crying on the phone, saying he felt trapped and misunderstood. This didn't sound like the William the first knew at all. William came home after 2 days, acting like nothing had happened. He even brought me flowers and apologized for overreacting. But something still felt off. While doing laundry the next day, I found a small notebook in his chef's coat pocket. I know I shouldn't have looked, but after everything that had happened, I needed to know the truth. The notebook started innocently enough with recipes and cooking notes. But as I kept reading, I found personal entries that made my heart sink. There were passages about feeling trapped in our marriage and how Sarah awakened something in him. He wrote about how she sees him as an artist, not just a provider, and how she understands his soul in a way no one else ever has. There was even a list of pros and cons about various life decisions, including one labeled starting fresh. I put the notebook back exactly where I found it and haven't mentioned it. How can I? The William who wrote those words is a stranger to me. The man I married would never lie about where he was spending his time or money. He would never hide his feelings in a secret notebook instead of talking to me. He would never let someone else come between us. I've started quietly preparing for whatever might come next. I opened a separate bank account and transferred part of my salary there. I've been documenting everything, the lies, the hidden expenses, the times he's been unaccounted for. I've even taken photos of the credit card statements, though I feel horrible about being this suspicious of my own husband. I don't know what to do next. Part of me wants to confront him about everything, the notebook, the lies, Sarah. But another part is terrified of what that conversation might reveal. Is this really about following his dreams, or is he using this career change to escape our marriage? Would exposing what I know push him further away or finally get him to be honest with me? For now, I'm watching and waiting, feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. The worst part is that I still love him, and I catch myself hoping this is all just a phase brought on by stress and major life changes. But deep down, I'm starting to think our marriage might be another casualty of this dream. Update 2: the truth finally exploded in my face last week, and it was even worse than I imagined. It started with an email from an address I didn't recognize, with the subject line "Your husband and my girlfriend." The sender was Robert, Sarah's boyfriend of 3 years. Robert's email was detailed and devastating. He had discovered the affair after finding Sarah's phone unlocked while she was in the shower. What he found was months of messages between her and William, dating back to almost the beginning of the culinary program. He sent me screenshots of their conversations, saying I deserved to know the truth just like he did. Reading through those messages was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. It started innocently enough with discussions about recipes and techniques, but quickly evolved into personal conversations. William complained about me to her, saying I was too focused on the practical side of life and didn't understand his artistic spirit. They mockingly referred to me as the banker in their messages, laughing about how I was too stupid to see what was happening right in front of me. The messages revealed that their study sessions were mostly spent at high-end restaurants, where William would spend hundreds of dollars on tasting menus and wine pairings. They justified it as research for their future business together. Yes, you read that right, they had plans to open a restaurant together after graduation. That $20,000 personal loan? A significant portion went towards their market research dinners and initial business planning for their future cafe. Sarah played her part perfectly, regularly stroking William's ego with messages about how talented and misunderstood he was. She called him her culinary soulmate and said I was holding him back from greatness. William ate it up, telling her she was the only one who truly understood his passion. What hurt the most were the messages where they planned their future together. They had picked out potential locations for their cafe, discussed menu concepts, and even talked about what their life would be like once they could be together properly. William had written that meeting Sarah made him realize he had settled in our marriage. After reading everything, I felt physically sick. I spent the whole day in bed, alternating between crying and feeling numb. But then anger took over. I printed out all the messages, laid them out on our dining table, the same table where he used to cook those romantic dinners for me, and waited for him to come home. When William walked in and saw the papers, all the color drained from his face. His first words weren't "I'm sorry" or even a denial. Instead, he said, "How did you get these?" Even in that moment, his primary concern was getting caught, not the pain he caused. The conversation that followed was both painful and enlightening. When backed into a corner with evidence, William's true colors came out. He tried to blame everything on me. My focus on financial security had driven him to seek understanding elsewhere. He claimed the stress of his career change and my lack of support had pushed him into Sarah's arms. According to him, Sarah understood that sometimes you have to take risks and break rules to achieve your dreams. When I brought up the money, our savings, the loan, the credit card debt he'd racked up wining and dining her, he had the audacity to defend it as investment in his future. He actually tried to argue that the expensive dinners were necessary for understanding fine dining culture, and Sarah was just helping him navigate that world. The real kicker came when I asked about their business plans. Turns out they had already put a deposit down on a potential restaurant space, using part of that $20,000 loan. They were planning to sign the lease next month. William had even drafted resignation paperwork from the culinary program, planning to drop out and start renovating the space with Sarah. I told him to leave that night. He tried to argue, saying he could explain everything, that he was confused and stressed, that Sarah didn't mean anything. But when I threatened to call the police, he finally left. He's been staying with his brother, who, by the way, called me to apologize profusely. Apparently, William had painted a very different picture of our marriage problems to his family. The next few days brought a flood of messages from William. Long paragraphs about how sorry he was, how he lost himself, how he wants to make things right. He offered to cut all contact with Sarah, quit culinary school, even try to get his old job back. He sent mutual friends to plead his case, had his mother call me crying, and even showed up at my office with flowers. Security escorted him out. But I'm done. The trust is gone, and so is the respect. The man I married, the one who cooked me dinner in his tiny college apartment and dreamed of building a life together, that man doesn't exist anymore. In his place is someone I don't recognize, someone who could lie to my face, steal our savings, and plan a future with another woman while sleeping in our bed. Update 3. I promised this would be my final update, and honestly, it feels right to close this chapter of my life. The past 3 months have been a roller coaster of legal meetings, emotional upheavals, and major life changes, but I'm finally starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. The divorce proceedings are well underway. After my last update, William's attempts to win me back became increasingly desperate. He showed up at my workplace so many times that I had to file a complaint with security. He sent handwritten letters about how Sarah meant nothing to him, how she was just a symptom of his quarter-life crisis, and how leaving his corporate job had made him temporarily insane. He even dropped out of culinary school and begged his old company to take him back. They declined, apparently. Word had gotten around about his dramatic exit and the whole chef dream fiasco. The karma train hit pretty hard. Sarah, the supposed soulmate who understood his artistic spirit, ended up leaving both William and Robert for another classmate at the culinary school. According to mutual friends, she has a history of this behavior. William was actually her third married man at the school. When William discovered he wasn't special, that he was just another notch in her belt, he had a complete meltdown. He drunk called me at 2 a.m., crying about how he destroyed his life for someone who saw him as just another conquest. The financial aftermath has been messy. Besides the $20,000 personal loan, I discovered he had opened 2 credit cards I didn't know about and maxed them both out, mostly on expensive restaurants and gifts for Sarah. The total damage is close to $45,000. Thankfully, my lawyer is a miracle worker. Since all the debt was in his name and we could prove he incurred it while carrying on the affair, I'm not liable for any of it. The judge was particularly unimpressed by the evidence of him spending our savings on another woman. I've moved out of our apartment and found a smaller place closer to work. It's an adjustment, going from our spacious 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom unit, but it feels like my space. No memories here, no ghosts of dinner parties past. I'm slowly rebuilding my savings and focusing on my career. I actually got promoted last month, which feels like the universe's way of saying I made the right choice. Some of our mutual friends think I should give William another chance. They point out that he's suffered enough. He lost his career, his dreams, his reputation, and his savings all at once. He's working as a line cook at Applebee's now, making barely above minimum wage. His brother told me he's living in their parents' basement and can barely make the minimum payments on his debt. They say he's learned his lesson. But I can't go back. The trust is completely shattered, and I'm not interested in being anyone's consolation prize or safety net. William didn't just cheat on me, he systematically lied to me, stole from our future, and mocked me to his affair partner. He was willing to throw away 10 years of marriage for a fantasy that lasted less than 3 months. That's not something therapy can fix. The irony of it all isn't lost on me. He left a 6-figure job to chase his culinary dreams, and now he's making burger platters at a chain restaurant. He wanted to be a respected chef with his own restaurant, and instead, he's living in his parents' basement at 30. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks his artistic spirit was worth the price. As for me? I'm doing better than I expected. The divorce should be finalized in a few months. My lawyer thinks we might even be able to get William to pay some of my legal fees given the circumstances. I've started taking cooking classes, partly to reclaim something he tainted, and partly because I refuse to live on takeout forever. My new place has a small but functional kitchen, and I'm slowly learning to enjoy cooking for myself. I've had a few friends try to set me up on dates, but I'm not ready. Right now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life and rediscovering who I am without William. Maybe someday I'll trust enough to love again, but for now, I'm content with my independence and peace of mind. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well.